الصلاة والسلام على أشرف حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخرين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Dear Mu'minina Mu'minat, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our a'mal in this month of Ramadan and help us in this journey of purification as we are purifying our body through our fasting, because the narration says, Sumu tasухhu, fast and you get healthier. And the reality is, the real benefits of fasting can only be attained and obtained through purification. If we only are abstaining from food and drink, then we only get the physical benefits. What do we have to abstain from and keep away from to achieve the spiritual benefits is what I want us to focus briefly on, inshallah, tonight, especially as it is Laylatul Jumu'ah and it is the night of return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the night of istighfar, seeking forgiveness. And this ayah from Surah Al-Ghafir that I began with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us how we can gain His forgiveness and how we can return to Him. Inshallah, I'll reflect on that. But first I want us to look at the physical versus the spiritual journey, and the abstinence in the physical journey and the spiritual journey, and how it can help us when we look at our physical journey and then we relate that to our spiritual journey. When we look at the physical journey, in the month of Ramadan we are meant to fast. During the day we are meant to abstain from eating and drinking. It is also mandatory and wajib to keep away from other, in fact, halal acts or even recommended acts, because it is a day of fasting. When we say eating and drinking halal becomes haram during the day in the month of Ramadan. What about haram stuff? What about eating haram stuff? What about having a haram relationship? What happens in that case? obviously the sin is greater. If not eating and not drinking is going to, basically if fasting is not to eat and not drink the halal stuff, if you have to abstain from the halal food and drink, and doing so, not doing so is haram. In other words, eating and drinking normal food is haram. What about eating haram food? It becomes, obviously, double haram. Am I doing qiyas here? I'm not doing it from my own opinion. You look at the results or the consequences in terms of the kaffara. If one breaks his fast intentionally, deliberately, during the day, in the month of Ramadan, without a good excuse, then they have to fast 60 days. Or in order, the first thing that they would have to do is to free a slave. You have no slaves, you fast 60 days. If you cannot fast 60 days, you feed 60 poor people. Unfortunately, nowadays people think it's default feeding 60 people. Immediately, you break your fast, feed 60 people. It doesn't work this way. It's in order, basically. If you cannot fast 60 days consecutive, and the least in terms of consecutive is basically you fast 31 days or 1 month and 1 day. That's the least. It should be 2 full months. Quran says 2 full months. So if you start from 1 lunar month, you have to complete the 2nd lunar month. However, if one cannot, then they can join the 2 months by fasting the 1st month and a day from the 2nd month at least, or 31 days. If you haven't started from the beginning of the month, then it's 31 days and you complete the other 29 other times. In any case, that is if you break your fast intentionally on something that is halal. What if you break your fast on something that is haram? Jurisprudentially, you have to do what we call al-jama'. In other words, do all the kaffarat. In other words, you have to do the freeing of the slave. You don't have, it falls, it's dismissed. Then you have to fast 60 days and you have to feed the 60 poor people. Obviously, when you do the haram, it's double the hurma, because you are breaking the law of eating or doing something haram, and at the same time breaking the law in terms of breaking your fast in the month of Ramadan. Now I want us to come to the spiritual journey. I think we're done with the physical journey, enough for tonight. Let's focus a little bit on the spiritual journey. In the spiritual journey, and I want us to come back to this physical one only as an example, as a parable. Let's look at the spiritual journey. If in the spiritual journey I want to gain purification, not physical purification now, not the fasting here, not the physical fasting, but a spiritual purification. If I want to gain spiritual purification during this month of Ramadan, what should I abstain from? Only haram or more than that? I will bring the question closer so it's clear. In the physical journey of Sawm, in order for me to obtain the physical purification of Sawm and to have at least jurisprudentially fulfilled my duty in terms of Sawm, I have to obviously abstain from what is halal. بطريق أولى, obviously in that case, the haram stuff you have to stay away from. Okay? So the extreme is the haram, But the norm for Sawm is the halal stuff. Yes? Coming back to the spiritual now. The norm or the extreme in the spiritual journey is to commit a sin, and one has to abstain from that. What is the norm in that case? It is an extreme that in the month of Ramadan you commit a sin. For the spiritual journey, that's an extreme. It is an extreme. It's almost like eating haram. You know, eating haram food in the month of Ramadan, what does it do to the soul? Doesn't only break it, but you have the kafara triple. In the month of Ramadan, committing a sin for the spiritual journey is an extreme case. So what is the normal case? If you're following with me, you know what I mean here. The normal case is to ascend above the mubah. Ascend above what is permissible. Even if it's permissible, but it's not the best, I want to stay away from it. Because there is better. You see where I'm coming from? That is a spiritual journey. And that is why in the month of Ramadan, people want to do extra sadaqat, extra feeding. People become generous, generally speaking. It's easier for people in the month of Ramadan, mu'mineen, to spend, to give. Why? Because it is more detachment in the spiritual sense. It's not just about, I don't eat, I don't drink. No. Here, or I don't, eat haram and I don't. No. Here I abstain from sins, one, and then I want to now spiritually elevate. We said first we detach, and second we what? After you detach, you start moving forward, not stay there. So when I detach, one is I stay away from haram. Second is I want to go to what's mustahab. I don't want to just stay in the wajib and then mubah act is fine. So generally speaking, in the month of Ramadan, and I say one of the biggest diseases of today's Muslim world are the TV series and TV in general. Because it takes away from the spiritual journey of the month of Ramadan. It ruins that spiritual journey. And wal-'iyadu billah, you commit sins in the month of Ramadan, there is no spiritual journey at all. It is almost like, or identical to eating haram during the day in the month of Ramadan. During the fast in the month of Ramadan, you eat haram, there is no fasting. Not only have you broken the fast, but you deserve triple the adab. Here in the spiritual journey, not only should we abstain from haram in this month, but we should go above and stay away from things that are not necessarily benefiting us in that spiritual journey. So if I'm going to sit and watch a TV series that is not increasing in my spirituality, in my knowledge, in my journey to qurb ilallah, in serving people. There are so many ways. I'm not saying it's only to stand on the prayer mat and pray. No. There's so many ways you can serve and get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this month of Ramadan, there are many ways. But definitely it's not sitting in front of the TV and watching some of those series. And definitely it is not sitting around and in majalis of, lahu and laghu. Wasted time, talks without any. We get together very frequently in the month of Ramadan. What should I do? You get together, it's beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves it when a mu'min visits a mu'min. It's beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But every gathering will become regretted, or a regret on the day of judgment would be regretted, and it would be a regret on the day of judgment unless there is dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in it. Every gathering. What about the month of Ramadan? Double regret. The month of Ramadan is the best time for that spiritual elevation. If we don't utilize it, if we don't take advantage of every second of it. We were discussing this the other day. We know in the month of Ramadan, sleeping is ibadah. Yeah? أنفاسكم فيه تسبيح ونومكم فيه عبادة. Sleeping is ibadah. What is that referring to? What kind of sleeping? And I want you to focus a little bit here. Does it refer to sleeping during the time of salat, for example? Would that be ibadah? Would it be ibadah to sleep بين الطلوعين, between Fajr and sunrise? Is that necessarily ibadah? The time that is actually not recommended to sleep. You sleep and you... No. Is it ibadah to sleep so that I don't feel any hunger in this whole thing, sleep throughout the day and stay up the night partying, as some nations do? Is this ibadah? So what is ibadah here in this? It is the sleep that one is tired, physically tired from the fasting and from ibadah, stayed up in Salatul Layl, in the 100 rak'at that are recommended in the month of Ramadan, which is recommended to do 1,000 rak'ah in the month, and in the nights of Qadr 100 rak'ah. Or tired of reciting the Holy Quran, the body is tired through fasting and doing their duties. The mother is working hard for the house and the family, the husband is working and coming and doing his extra ibadah and hunger. All together he sleeps. That sleep is beloved in the eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see the spiritual journey versus the physical journey of many people? Unfortunately, the month of Ramadan has turned into a physical journey. The spiritual side of it is not there, or hardly anything is there. Now I want us to focus on this Laylatul Jumu'ah. A recommended thing in this month of Ramadan, one of the most recommended things in fact, is to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dua. You want to do something that takes you to a next level? You want to elevate in the spiritual journey? You want to do the norm. We said the norm in the physical journey is to abstain from food. The norm in the spiritual journey is to do the mustahab, not just do the mubah. You see what I mean here? Mustahab in the month of Ramadan, we said all these acts. One of them, which is one of the most beautiful things in the month of Ramadan, is dua. And those of you who have a relationship with some of the du'as of the month of Ramadan, as soon as the month is over, they feel sad. That the month where I used to be able to recite, you can recite some of these du'as anytime, but it doesn't have the same taste. Dua Abi Hamza Thumali doesn't have the same taste after the month of Ramadan. It's most beautiful in the month of Ramadan. Dua al-Iftitah doesn't have the same taste after the month of Ramadan. Unfortunately, many of us, we do it ritually. If we value these supplications and these spiritual journeys. And I spoke from the beginning of the month that we need to focus that the month is not over and then we revert to the norm, to our normal selves. Now we have taken a step, a spiritual step ahead of what we were before, what we were the year before. So I want us to focus very briefly on Dua Kumail tonight. Because after the month of Ramadan, every Laylatul Jum'ah, we have the opportunity of reciting Dua Kumail. And we have that special time every Laylatul Jum'ah, not only in the month of Ramadan. The rest of them, the dua specific for the month of Ramadan, inshallah, we will recite and we will reflect on them and spiritually elevate. But I want us to briefly focus on Dua Kumail. Inshallah, we do not underestimate this dua. In fact, this dua is most recommended on the eve of the birth of our Imam, Nisf min Sha'ban, Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. That is the specific narration where the Imam narrated it. And then Kumail came to him later and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Imam says to him, what brought you here this late? He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, the dua that you mentioned, Dua al-Khidr. So the Imam says to him, sit and learn. And he teaches him this beautiful dua, which is a journey that puts this world behind completely. In fact, the image of this dua, once you get deep into the dua, the image that you will have in your mind is the day of judgment and Jannah and Nar. In some parts, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayhi literally describes hellfire and him calling. And he's not saying he is, he's teaching us. This is the humbleness in ibadah. That one realizes that we only could get, and this is what we recite after dua, after salat, in every dua, in every salat in the month of Ramadan, in dua, Ya Aliyu, Ya Azim. In the end of it, what do you say? وَأَدْخِلْنِ الْجَنَّةَ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Through our a'mal, we don't deserve Jannah. It is through His mercy that we would be admitted to Jannah, inshaAllah. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing that I know you're the merciful one. You got me used to your mercy in dunya. Rabbaytani. Inshallah, we'll do the reflection, a bit of reflection on this dua, inshallah, tomorrow night, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the opportunity and life, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the opportunity to be amongst the da'een, those who call upon Him in the month of Ramadan sincerely. We ask Him to make us amongst those who listen to what's said and follow what's best. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.